Welcome to the fourth lesson for Python for beginners. Today we will discuss the branching instructions. A branch instruction is used when we have to make a decision where we want to uh, execute a certain set of a statement or whether we want to skip it. Or sometime we decide whether we execute a certain set of a statement or another set of statements. So there are two blocks of a statement that we decide which one we want to execute. The third type of if statement is that when we have nested statement, that if this condition is false, then we test next condition. If next condition is false, then we test the next condition. For example, we have your numeric grade. We will do an example. So if you get 90 or above, you get an A. But if you don't get 90 or above, then we have to test it for a B. If you did not get also 80 or above for a B, then we have to test this for a C. So there are multiple tests or multiple results that we can execute. So in Python, we use the if, else, and else, elif structures, and I will show you an example. And just first take a look at a program that we are going to execute, or we are going to write the Python program for that. So I will show you a word problem and then we will solve that particular problem in Python. So consider the problem statement. Write a program to determine the wages of an employee. The program must ask the user to enter the hours that the employee has worked and the hourly rate for their work. If the employee has worked more than 20 hours, then we have to pay them a 10% bonus. Now, this 10% bonus is only given if you have satisfied the condition of working more than 20 hours, okay? So let's write down the if-else statement in there, and also we will discuss the operator that we use while we compare two values. So let's bring up our Python ideally and start writing our little program. And while we are writing that program, we will also discuss the different operators that we are using. So I have my Python ideally open, and let's go and open a new file. And it has my new file open. So I'm going to write, of course I start with a comment with the professor A. And then we are going to write down a problem. First of all, if you go back, what we have to do is we must ask the user to enter the hours worked and hourly rate. How much would the wages be? Our wages will be the product of the hours and the hourly rate, right? So let's write that down. So first, ask the user how many hours they have worked. So we will say hours variable will come from the user. Now, can hours be float or integers? If they are integer, then we expect the people to be working only full hours, like 3 hours or 4 hours or 2 hours, right? But if we take hours as float, then we have the chance of working 4.5 hours or 3.25 hours, right? So let's take that as a float, and we will say the hours are going to be the float. We close that. Now what we do is then we will take the input. Make sure that you close the parentheses as we move along, and inside the input we are going to put the prompt, which we will say that please enter the hours worked. Okay, and then we close this prompt. Now the next thing we have to know is what is the hourly rate. So we can say rate is equal to, again this should be a float, because sometimes people get 8.5 hour or 3/4 hour, or $7.25, stuff like that. And in here we will say it should come from the input, and for the input we are going to put a prompt in here that please enter the hourly pay rate, right? Oh, sorry. So that will give us the number of hours that the users have worked. So this input statement will ask the keyboard, wait on the keyboard for you. When you enter the data on the keyboard, it will be treated as a float and will be stored in the variable hours. Similar for this one, always the inside parentheses happen first, and then we move from inside to outside, like the order of precedence in most mathematical operations work. Now the wage is equal to the wage would be, as we know, would be the number of hours multiplied by the rate, right? That will give you the number of hours. Now, what do we have to do is, now we have a condition, because that it might be possible that somebody has worked more than 20 hours, so they should be given a higher 10% bonus. So let's see how we will do that. Here the wage is calculated and it's ready to go, but we have to see whether we should add the bonus in that or not. So let's write the if statement. Also carefully follow the syntax that I'm using to write the if statement. So we'll write if, that means we are going to test a condition, and the condition was hours. Now how do we put the greater than symbol? The greater than symbol is this, the if hours are greater than 20, and Python requires you to put a colon there, and that way, now in Python, everything that needs to be conditional on this if statement must be inside in this indented block. Okay, so if hours are greater than 20, then we will calculate the wage would become whatever is the wage plus 10% of the wage. How do we calculate the 10%? We take the 10, we divide it by 100, because this is 10 and percent. So whatever is your wage, we will add wage 10% value in there. So wage will only change if this condition is true, right? Now we come out of this, this is the only conditional. So when we are outside of the block and we are normal indented level, then that means the rest of the conditions are not dependent on the if condition. So we will say in either case, print you earned, and we want to print, the computer has no idea or no care, does not care, whatever is the, so we will write down you earn dollar and whatever is the, so comma connects the strings with the variable values. Okay, so if hours are greater than 20, wage is equal to wage, whatever was the wage, plus wage time the 10%. Now only this statement is conditional on this condition being true, so we would only execute that when this is true. If not, then we have already calculated the wage. It will only change if you work more than 20 hours. So let's save this file like we are doing before and run back again. So if I'm going to do in here, it's going to ask me, I've already saved up a smaller version of it, so I will say okay, and it's now ready to run. So you might have to go through saving, and then you will see here. So let's say I have worked 12 hours, right? And my pay rate is 10. So 10, how many hours we get? 120 hours. How does that come from? Because I have only worked 12 hours, so I do not get the 10% raise. So 120 times 10 gets 120. Now let me run it again, and let's see what do I get now. So if I do that again, let's say I have worked 22 hours, right? And again, my hourly wage is 10. So 10 times 22 is 220, but I will also get 10% of raise. So I get 220 plus 10% of 220, which is 22. So I got 242. So this is called a single if statement. Here we conditionally executed this statement only when the hours are greater than 20. So let's do another example and see how that works. So this block, it could be more than one instruction here if you want to. It can be as many as the instruction that you want to be dependent on this condition, but make sure they are at the same indented level. They only will be dependent on this if they are indented at that level. So let's go ahead and let's see another example that I have prepared for you, and let's see if we can write down an if statement for that as well. So please read this problem carefully. It says write a program to determine whether a user must pay adult ticket price or child ticket price depending on their age. Okay. So what we have to do is we have to ask the user what is your age, and then depending on that we will decide whether it's an adult ticket price if they are older than 18, equal to or older than 18. Now we have to check equal to and greater than. And the child ticket price if they are less than that, if they are not, if this condition is not true, right? So how do we write that program? So let's go ahead and open up our program and let's write that down. So I'm going to save my program as we can save them as a different thing. So we can write down our program as let's say test2 or ticket.py. Okay, we call that. Now very first thing is that a person age is a numerical value, that is a whole number. We cannot say 10.5. Usually we have to be either 10 or not when we are using this to determine a certain criteria. So let's go ahead and do that. Now you have to tell me whether I use an integer, or let's say I have to take age, whether it's going to be an integer or a float. It's going to be an integer because we take age as whole numbers. Where am I going to get it? I'm going to take it as an input, and in the input I'm going to put the prompt. So I will say, please enter your age. Okay. In here then I have to check the age. So I will say if age, now I have to check not only greater than but also equal to, right? So we can use age is greater than or equal to 18 if they are 18 or older. Let's see, when I put the colon, you can see the indentation itself happens. I'm going to say print you pay the full price. Okay, so you are going to pay the full price. Now if that is not true, you see when I press enter on that, it keeps coming to the same indented. You can use the backspace if you are done here, and I am going to start an else block here. And in the else block I will say else you need to pay the child price. So let's write it down. I'm going to copy this back in here, Control C. Come in here, you see it's automatically bringing me in here. Let me pack that F, and then we need to pay the child price or the discounted price. So here I have decided I'm going to choose, depending on this condition being true or false, I am going to choose either this statement or this statement. In the previous example, I was skipping or executing this statement. Here I'm going to do one or other. So this is a two-directional if. Okay, so this is an if statement, but it has an if and an else, right? If this is true, do this. If that is not true, then do this. So let's go ahead and run this program. Let's see what happened. So it's asking for, I enter the age, and I say the age is 45, and they say you need to pay the full price. Let me run it again. And I say the age is 12, and you need to pay the child price. So what we just learned is that I will do more complex problem. Right now I just want you to understand the basic if-else statement in Python. This is how we write them, and these are the comparator operators. We will have a discussion about what type of comparator operators we can have. Okay, so let's move on to another type of if statement where we have multiple decisions to make. So let's take a look at that, and first look at the problem that we can use to demonstrate that. So read this problem. What does it say? Determine the letter grade of a student depending on their numeric grade. So we will enter what is your numeric grade, and then we will determine what is their letter grade. So a grade of 90 or above is an A, a grade of less than 90 but greater than or equal to 80 is a B. So you see this statement is dependent on failure of the previous one, right? If this one fails, then we actually check that. And then we have a grade of less than 80 but greater than or equal to 70 is a C, a grade of less than 70 but greater than or equal to 60 is a D, anything else, anything less than 60 is an F. So let's try writing the program for this problem. Here we have multiple if statements that we have to check, but each depends on the previous one failing. Okay, so let's bring up our IDLE and write our program called grades. So we have our IDLE. I accidentally has closed it before, so I'm going to open it again. I'm opening a file, and let me call it, I always put my comment in here. You guys can put other comments in there, whatever you want to put in. I always like to put the comments in there. Hold on, let me bring that back up. So let me write the code here, make it a little bigger. So I'm going to write down my program. So first I'm going to ask the user to input their letter grade, numeric grade. So I will say the grade is equal to It could be a float. They might have received 85.3 or something, right? And the same thing, where is it going to come from? It is coming from input. Now the input would be, we will please enter your numeric grade. Okay, and then we will do the comparisons. So I've done our if statement, we'll say. So that is how we write the program. You can see that I have written that. Here we have if grade is greater than or equal to 90, then we print A. Now if this condition fails, then we use the elif command. Elif command is a dependent else on failing of the previous statement but another a test. So although we are not, the grade is not greater than or equal to 90, because that is what it means when it fails here, right? We will skip all of its block and then come to another test. In that test we say, well, okay, if it is greater than or equal to 90, not if it fails there, that means that one is false. It's not greater than or equal to 90. Is it greater than or equal to 80? If that is true, then we will say, yeah, print B. Now what is the possibility that this one also fails? If that one is also failed, then we will fall in here. So each respective condition is tested using the elif condition. Make sure you write down your statements in the correct logical order. And if the grade is greater than or equal to 60, we print D. Now if this one fails, if this one fails, if this one fails, if this one fails, then we are not doing any further check. Anything less than 60 is going to print an F. So this is how we do multiple if statements. Sometimes they call it nested. It's also called an if-elif-elif structure. This particular structure is useful when you have different milestones. Like if it is greater than 10, you do something. If it's greater than 8, you do something else. If it is greater than 6, you know, kind of like, but it's always make sure you check the the last boundary first, and then you check the respective boundaries. If you want the first one to happen, if first one fails, then you want the second one to happen. If the first one fails and then second one also fails, you want to do the third one to happen. So if I run this program with a grade of 64, what will happen? The grade is equal to 64. Okay, please remember that. So let me put that an example in here. Let's say the user enter grade is equal to 64, right? So the grade value is 64. It is not greater than or equal to 90. So this one fails. Failing that, will bring it in here. The grade is 64, which is not greater than or equal to 80. So this one fails as well. Come to this condition, grade is not equal to or greater than 64. This one fails as well. When we come here, this one passes because the grade is greater than or equal to 60, and so we will print D. So that is how we can do multiple. If we have 85, that this one will fail, but our execution will stop here because this catch will catch it. Okay. So let's go ahead and test this, how that works, and then we will have a short discussion about the different operators that are used in the comparison statements when we use the if-else statement. So let's go ahead and save and run this file. So I'm going to call it grades. So I have saved it. Now I'm going to run it. Okay, so say enter your numeric grade. Now if I have 78, I must get a C, right? Because 90 failed, 80 failed, and I get a C. So let's go ahead and run it again. And I'm going to enter, let's say 56. I got a very bad grade. I got an F, right? So that is how we discuss different types of if-else statement in here. And let's have a discussion of different types of conditional operators that we can use. So in Python, we can use different types of conditional operators to compare anything that the greater than or less than, we use the greater than or equal to sign. So if I want to compare If I want to compare x value with y and check whether x is greater than y, I will use the greater than symbol. If I want to compare whether x is less than y, I will use the less than symbol. If I want to check whether x is greater than or equal to y, I will use the greater than or equal to y symbol. We don't have this symbol, so don't use that. If I want to use less than, less than or equal to, let me draw that again. So if I want to make x is less than or equal to y, I will use this symbol. Now what if when I want to test x equal to y? Now that is a problem sometimes we get into issue in here, that how do we go with x equal to y? So how do we do that? So we use two equal signs. So because if I use, so when I want to check whether x is equal to y, I use two equal signs, right? I do not use one equal sign. So let's say x was 4 and y was 5. And I want to test whether x is equal to y, I will use two equal signs, and that will give me a false result. What will happen if I use this? If I use this, what would happen is that x will become y. So value of y would be moved into or copied into x. That is called an assignment operator. When we have a single equal sign, we call it an assignment operator. When we have two equal signs, that is when we compare the equality of two variables. Now, what if we want to use not equal to? Not equal to would be used as x, we have the exclamation mark, not equal to y. So if x is not equal to y, that is what you want to test, then you better put the exclamation mark and equal sign. So just a little practice here. I have x is equal to 4 and y is equal to 5, right? So when I write down is x greater than y, my answer would be false. If I write down x greater than or equal to y, that will also be false, right? If I write down x less than y, my answer would be true. If I write down x is less than or equal to y, my answer would be true because one of these conditions is true, right? Now if I write down I'm just going into this column. So if I write down x equal to y, remember I have to use two equal signs. That would be a false statement. And if I write down x not equal to y, that would be a true statement. Now we can combine two conditions together, like x must not be equal to y and y must be greater than 5. We can combine those. For that we will learn the compound Boolean expression in our next statement, and in our next lesson, sorry. And then hold on, and if you like this video, let me know what topics you would like me to cover, and I will prepare my lectures on that. Thank you.